You are knowing what you're wanting. Moves about a little bit, doesn't it? You are appreciating the expansion of your personal desire. Most important question that anyone will ever put to you. Are you enjoying your personal desire? Yes. Because if you are, that means you are in the vibrational vicinity of it. That means you are believing what you are desiring. You are expecting what you are desiring to unfold. You are not uncomfortable with the fact that it hasn't completely or will ever completely be manifested because you are an eternal being. And desire is just going to keep hatching. Your desire is always going to stay one step ahead of you while your allowing catches up with it. That's just the eternal nature of eternity, of alwaysness. So when you want something and you doubt it, that feels really uncomfortable, doesn't it? I want it, but when you argue for your limitations, that is such an unpleasant state of being. It's not fun to hear with others, is it, either? They express sometimes that they desire something, and then you watch them just shoot themselves in the foot with statements that contradict their own desire. Because the way this universe works is, it is vibrational. You are too. And you are constantly emanating vibrational signals. And when the vibrational signal of your desire is different than the vibrational signal of your belief, then you've got contradictory vibration going on within you. Your vibration is not clear. It's not pure. So law of attraction, as law of attraction is responding to your vibration, is responding to the mix rather than to the clarity or the purity of your vibration. When you want something and you don't doubt it, then there's no split energy going on within you, and it happens quickly. And there are many things in your life that are like that, both wanted and unwanted. In other words, if you have a strong belief and it's about something that you don't want, but it's dominant, a belief is just a thought you keep thinking, isn't it? So when you think it and think it and think it and think it, then it manifests. And sometimes our physical friends, we love you so much, will say to us, but Abraham, Esther said it to us so many times in the early days of her getting to know us, but it's true. This is a belief that I hold, but it is true. And therefore, I defend the correctness of my focusing upon this truth. And we said to Esther so many times, we would use a different criteria because you make it true by your attention to it. When you look out into the world and you see events or experiences that are being lived by others or even by yourself, and you acknowledge this is true, therefore I should document it. It should be a statistic. It should be something that I and others take note of. We just want you to ask the question, but is this something that I want to continue in my experience? Because if it isn't, then if we were standing in your physical shoes, we would not give our attention to these unwanted things, therefore keeping them vibrationally active in our vibration, therefore causing law of attraction to respond to our vibration and deliver to us more of this unwanted thing. In your physical world, you are objective, and we get why, because you're here to explore. But as you weigh the pros and the cons and the pluses and the minuses, you just contradict your vibration. If you would just weigh the pros and 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 the pros, pretty soon you would practice the pros and 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 the pros, and that would be your dominant vibration, and that would be your experience. And others would look at you and say, you're not normal. You're not normal. Things are always working out for you. And you would say to them, it's a long story, how much time you got? And they'd say, not enough, and off they'd go. Because most people are not willing to take the time to clarify their own vibration. They'd rather just observe what is and complain about the parts they don't like. And when you observe what is and complain about the parts you don't like, you keep the parts you don't like in your experience, you see. In your human environment. Did we tell you how much we love you? You have a war against drugs and a war against cancer and a war against teenage pregnancy and a war against violence and a war against terrorism, and every one of them is getting bigger because your war against does not make them go away. This is a universe that's based upon attraction. It's an inclusion-based universe, which means when you look at something and you say, yes, yes, I would like more of that, more of it comes to you. But when you look at something and you say, no, I do not want more of that comes to you too. Because the universe does not hear your yes or your no. The universe hears your attention to the subject, you see. So every time you're looking at something and saying you don't want it, what the universe is acknowledging is you've got an active vibration about it. And so here's some more. I still don't like it. Well, how about this? No, I don't like it even more than I didn't like it before. Well, then try this. Now, it's not really like that. That's how it feels to you. In other words, the law of attraction is not punishing you and not trying to teach you any lessons. It's like the law of gravity. When you were first introduced into this physical world, your instructors, your parents, and your teachers did not say, the law of gravity hates you. And when you jump off of tall things, it's going to really hurt you. You just came to understand. You learned to work within it. You learned through experience that when you throw something up, it's going to come down. And when you step off of something without wings, and you don't have wings, that you're going to plummet to the earth. So we want you to become familiar with this law of attraction in the same way that you've come to accept the law of gravity. It's a consistent law. It's consistent. It's always fair. Whatever you are offering a thought about, you have an active vibration about. And the more often you think about it, the more active the vibration. And the more active the vibration, the more momentum. So we cannot talk about law of attraction without talking about momentum. A thought that you think is rather uneventful at first, but the more you think it, the more attraction power it has, until eventually it manifests in your experience. Esther will never forget being in San Francisco that first time and seeing the hills that those crazy people were driving up and down. She could not believe it. Have you seen them? Can you imagine being at the top of one of those hills, taking your parking brake off and taking your car out of gear, and just for fun or just for a learning experience, you decide you will discover what momentum really is. So you just nudge your car that is not engaged with brakes or gears. You just nudge it a little from behind just to see what will happen next. And of course, what will happen next begins to happen. And then you realize you don't have to test this. You know what's going to happen. So you just step out in front of your car and you let it bump up against you in the very early stages of the very slight momentum. And no problem at all. You stop the momentum early on. But you would not want to be at the bottom of the hill stopping that momentum. And that's the way we want you to think about the thoughts that you think that are not serving you. You want to stop the momentum of them in the earlier stages. And sometimes our physical friends say, but I have a strong belief because so much has manifested that has proven this to me. And we want to remind you, and we will continue to remind you, that the reason that things continue to manifest is because you have an active vibration about them. And the reason that things continue to prove themselves as they do is because you have an active vibration. In other words, you are making them true. You create your own reality through the thoughts that you think. And we know it's not easy at first to sort that out because there are thoughts that you've been thinking that have been passed on from generation to generation. Those around you are thinking those thoughts. And many of the thoughts that you think, and therefore many of the beliefs that you hold, because a belief is just a thought that you've practiced well that has a lot of momentum. Many of the beliefs that you hold are serving you enormously well, and some of them are not. So how do you sort out the difference? How do you know? How do you know what's serving you and what doesn't? Well, we want to say to you that what doesn't serve you are contradictory thoughts to your own desire. You are so much more than these physical bodies. Do you know that? You were non-physically focused before you came here, and the larger part of you is still non-physically focused even though you are here. You are source, soul, consciousness at the same time that you are this magnificent human perspective. So you've got this perspective, this God view, this non-physical, this inner being view that is the eternal part of you. That's the part of you who loves no matter what. One day Esther was observing something really unwanted. Another person, a really rascally person. And she felt strong negative emotion in her discontent with this person. And later on she was talking to us, why do I feel this way when I think about that person? And we said, because you are not looking at that person the way the source within you looks at that person. What do you mean? Well, we always love that person. And when you find reason not to, you've got discord going on within you. Well, Esther, especially in those early days, thought that the remedy was to make us understand what was wrong with that person. Clearly, Abraham, you need more information. Because I'm sure if you knew what I know, you would feel like I feel. So you should agree with me. Because she came to understand early on that if she is in agreement with us, she feels clear, she feels joy, she feels love, she feels appreciation. That clarity is such a wonderful thing, seen through the eyes of Source, an unconditional love that we'll talk more about here. And so it took a while for us to help her to understand that there are different ways of looking at things, but anything that you're looking at that causes you to feel negative emotion means one thing and one thing only, always, every time, no exception. You've got contradictory energy going on within you because the larger part of you sees it differently. Like if you don't like yourself, you feel awful because Source loves you. If you don't like that person, you don't feel good because Source does love that person. If you feel inadequate, you feel terrible because Source knows that you are adequate. Source knows your power. Source knows your value. Source knows your worthiness. And when you get crossways of that, you don't feel so good. So you were Source energy before you came into this physical body, and a part of you is focused here, an important part, a leading edge part. And as you're focused here, you're exploring the variety, and you know what you don't want, and you know what you do want, and every time you come to that conclusion of what you would prefer, whether it's consciously or unconsciously. In other words, even at a cellular level, you are discerning and deciding. All based upon what's best for you. You could not be more selfishly oriented because you are the attractor, you are the creator of self. But you are not alone in that selfness because Source is self with you. You sort of kind of get that? So as you are exploring here and knowing what you don't want and therefore knowing what you do want, you emanate a rocket of preference, a rocket of desire. We call it a rocket because it shoots out of you. It's a vibrational current. It's a vibrational request. And in the moment, that's step one of the creative process. You emanate that, and you do it whether you know that you're doing it or not. You do it because life just causes you to make those decisions all day, every day, at all levels of your being. So you're launching these rockets of desire, these preferences that you may or may not, usually not in the beginning, be a vibrational match to. Because knowing what you don't want has just now helped you clarify how it would be better if it were different. So you launch this rocket that you're not up to speed with, but Source, the Source within you, the part of you who is non-physically focused, is up to speed with it immediately. We're moving over here into what we are calling your vortex. You're so kind to follow us in all of this madness. So this vibrational rocket emanates from you, and the Source within you becomes a vibrational match to it, integrates it into the allness that is you. It's another preference that you are adding into the fullness that is you. And Source is immediately, instantaneously up to speed with your new request, which is the reason that you could potentially feel negative emotion. Because if you are not instantly, and you usually aren't, up to speed with the new request, in other words, you don't believe it in most cases because most of you need to see it before you believe it, which is so backwards. You got to believe it before you're going to see it. Source knows it. And when you stop beating the drum of the reasons that it won't work, or stop beating the drum of why you don't believe that it will now because it hasn't before, and you just allow yourself to be in this expectant place, then you are a vibrational match to what you want.